Today I'm going to teach you clear and simple music theory based on the guitar in 12 minutes or less. No music reading necessary. So make sure to download the free PDF in the description below, and let's jump into the lesson. Today we'll be talking about essentially Western music, which is heavily influenced by European classical music meeting the blues. And that kind of became, essentially American music. The blues and other Black American music is extremely important to these styles of music. The smallest measurement between two notes is going to be a half step, which on the guitar is just 1 fret. We have 12 total notes in our musical system, and they're each separated by 1 half step. So for example, if you play up and down one single string, 1 fret at a time, you are playing in half steps. Now the half step can go either direction on the guitar. If you're going towards the body, that is ascending a half step. If you're going towards the headstock, that is descending a half step. Now in our musical system, we have what we call 7 natural notes. Those notes are A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. These notes are laid out on the guitar and every other instrument as well. Now, the challenging thing about our musical system is that these notes are not spaced equally. So let's learn about the whole step first. So if a half step is 1 fret up towards the body of the guitar or down towards the headstock, a whole step is going to be 2 frets. So say I was on the 3rd fret of the A string, a whole step would be up to the 5th fret of the A string. If I wanted to play a descending whole step, play any note, say the 5th fret of the G, move down a whole step, boom, and we have a descending whole step. Now again, the spacing between these natural notes is not going to be consistent, unfortunately, but that's how the system is designed. So what you need to remember is that B to C is a half step and E to F is a half step. The rest of the notes are just a whole step apart. So anytime you're on a B, it's going to be a half step up to C. Anytime you're on an E, it's going to be a half step up to F. All the rest of the notes are a whole step apart. A to B, C to D, D to E, F to G, and G back to A. So what you want to do with the guitar, especially to improve your guitar fretboard knowledge, is you might play the natural notes on each string every single day, say and play them out loud. Let's look at them on the A string right now. So we start on A, we have a whole step up to B, a half to C, a whole to D, a whole to E, a half to F, a whole to G, and a whole, we're back to A. At the 12th fret, all the notes repeat. So if you know that you have E, A, D, G, B, E as your open strings, at the 12th fret, you also have E, A, D, G, B, and E. Now my recommendation is to always play and say the notes as you ascend, and then you gotta descend as well. A lot of guitar players are weaker at their descending. A, G, F, E, D, C, B, A. If you do the natural notes on each string a little bit every day, saying and playing them, you will be blown away at how much better your fretboard knowledge is in just a few weeks. Now that we know the natural notes on the guitar neck, let's talk about accidentals. So accidentals are sharps and flats. What is a sharp? A sharp is when you take any of the natural notes, and I mean any of them. You can sharp A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And what you do is you raise them 1 half step towards the body of the guitar. So if I took an A and I wanted to get an A sharp, I just move up a fret. If I have a B, I want to get a B sharp, I move up a fret. Now a lot of people freak out when you say B sharp and E sharp, because they also have other names. We'll talk about that in one moment. So a sharp simply means to raise any of the natural notes by 1 fret towards the body of the guitar. What is a flat? A flat means to lower any of the notes by 1 fret towards the headstock. So if I was on this E here on the B string at the 5th fret and I wanted an E flat, I just move down 1 fret towards the headstock, and that is an E flat. Again, just like with the sharps, any natural note could be flatted. So you have A, B, C, D, E, F, and G for natural notes. You have A sharp, B sharp, C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, F sharp, and G sharp for all the sharps. And you have the same for flats. A flat, B flat, C flat, D flat, E flat, F flat, and G flat. A lot of people talk and say that B sharp, E sharp, C flat, and F flat don't exist, but that's absolutely not true. For certain keys, you need to use those letter names. But just realize that it's this special term called enharmonic. Enharmonic is just a fancy word for saying a note that has 2 different names. and there are lots of them in our musical system. Let's look at the chromatic scale, which is the scale that contains all 12 notes in it. If we look at the chromatic scale on the A string, we've got A sharp or B flat, B, or sometimes called C flat, C, or sometimes called B sharp, C sharp D flat, D, D sharp or E flat, E, or sometimes called F flat, F, or sometimes called E sharp, F sharp or G flat, G, G sharp or A flat, A. I get a lot of resistance online about these extra sharps and flats. Whatever you want to do in your brain is fine, but just realize we'll learn in a moment when you might use those sharps and those flats. Hey, so if you're enjoying this lesson, make sure to check out my new interactive ebook. It's called Street Music Theory, and it's all about presenting music theory in its simplest form. There are video walkthroughs for each chapter, and all the diagrams are easy to read and easy to understand. No standard music reading required. Make sure to click that link below in the description and get 30% off of Street Music Theory today. So the absolute most important scale to understand in order to understand music theory is the major scale. The major scale is a 7-note scale, and this scale contains a particular formula of whole steps and half steps in order to create it. That formula is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. That's a little hard to remember for some people, so maybe you think WWH, WWWH, or maybe you think 2 wholes then a half, 3 wholes then a half. Whatever is easiest for you. There's one major scale in our musical system that contains all the natural notes, and that is the key or the scale of C major. An important aside, the word key and the word scale essentially mean the same thing. If you're in a certain key, you're using notes from that particular scale. If you're in a scale, you're using notes from that key. They're kind of interchangeable. So for our purposes, key and scale are the same thing. Now let's look at the C major scale. I'm gonna start on the 3rd fret of the A string. That's a C. I'm gonna go C, up a whole step to D, whole step to E, a half to F, a whole to G, a whole to A, a whole to B, and a half back to C. So realize when we're talking about whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, we're measuring the space between the notes. C to D is a whole step, D to E is a whole step, E to F is a half. So what we just created was a 7-note major scale. We start on the 1st note of the scale, then we've got the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th. There is no 8, we just come back to the 1. So again, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to 1. Now, in our musical system, there are what I call the 15 logical major scale. Now, you might say, wait, there are only 12 notes. How are there 15 different scales? Well, there are 3 different overlapping keys that could kind of go either direction. If you play a lot of music over your lifetime, you'll realize that string players, guitar players, they tend to like to talk about sharps. Horn players, they tend to like to talk about flats. So being really diverse and being able to talk about sharps or flats and all of those 15 logical major scales will make you incredibly diverse and ready to play with anyone you want to jam with. Now, in order to understand these 15 logical major scales, I made up a thing called the 4 rules of major scales or major keys. Let's talk about those 4 rules. The number 1 rule is you cannot have flats and sharps in the same key. That's just really important. So in these different keys, you're going to have natural notes, or natural notes and sharps, or natural notes and flats. So for example, you cannot have a C sharp and a G flat in the same key. Rule number 2, all 7 notes have to be present, meaning you need some type of A, some type of B, some type of C, D, E, F, and G in your scale. The 3rd rule that is kind of redundant but really good is you cannot have 2 different types of the same note. So for example, in a scale, you can't have an A and an A sharp. Another example would be you can't have a G and a G flat in the scale. And the 4th rule is that the next note of the scale will always be the next letter of our musical alphabet. So if you're on a G and you're trying to figure out the next note, it's going to be some type of A. If you're on a C and you're trying to figure out the next note, it's going to be some type of D. So here are the 15 logical major scales. C major, F major, B flat major, E flat major, A flat major, D flat major, or C sharp major, G flat major or F sharp major, B major or C flat major, E major, A major, D major, and G major. Make sure to check those out in the PDF below. Now I call them the 15 logical major scales because we will never go more than 7 sharps or 7 flats. So we have C major, which has 0 sharps and flats, and then we just add 1 sharp or 1 flat for each of them. So we're 1 sharp, 2 sharp, 3 sharp, 4, all the way to 7. And then same with the flats, 1 flat, 2 flat, 3 flat, all the way to 7 flats. And those 7 plus 7 plus 1, those are our 15 logical major scales. Now in early music, all music was monophonic, meaning one note just happened at a time. However, hundreds of years ago, our music evolved and people started playing chords. And chords are when you take notes from the scale, you stack them, and build chords. Now in this lesson today, we don't have time to do a deep dive into them, but I'm going to show you the chords that work in the major scale. We're going to look at C major first, and we're going to build a chord from each of the notes of the scale. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So the C chord will be major, D will be minor, E will be minor, F will be major, G will be major, A minor. We have this wonky B diminished that's not used much in popular music. Back to C major. So any major scale that you want to play the chords in will follow that same system. The 1 chord's major, the 2 is minor, the 3 is minor, the 4 is major, the 5 is major, the 6 is minor, the 7 is diminished, and the 1 back to major. And you can throw those chords together in any order that you like and make up great chord progressions. Now that you've learned a ton of music theory, make sure to click this video next to learn the 5 habits that will keep you intermediate.